Can you imagine getting a phone call that shatters everything you thought you knew about your life? A call that tells you own a house you've never even seen, and you're already 3 months behind on a mortgage you absolutely, unequivocally did not sign. That's exactly what happened to me. My name is Naomi, and I was 31, working a quiet job as an intake coordinator at a pediatric clinic in Minneapolis. It was a Wednesday afternoon, just like any other. I was finalizing patient records, half listening to my coworker joke about her toddler's latest meltdown when my cell phone buzzed. An unknown number. Usually, I'd let those go straight to voicemail, but something just felt different. It wasn't spam. I stepped into the hallway, a knot forming in my stomach, and I answered. "Miss Blake, this is Nathan from North Lakes Credit Union. I'm calling regarding your past due mortgage on the Highland property. You're 3 months delinquent." I blinked hard, trying to process his words. "I'm sorry," I stammered. "What mortgage?" He repeated the amount, $623,000. My breath hitched. For a second, I literally couldn't speak. I mean, me? I lived in a rented one-bedroom apartment near Hennepin Avenue. I had no savings for a down payment, no co-signer, no grand illusions about home ownership in this economy. This had to be a scam. But then he read the address, Highland Avenue. The name didn't immediately click, but when it did, a horrifying realization washed over me. My sister, Alyssa, and her husband, Gavin, had just moved into a gorgeous craftsman home on Highland a few months ago. I'd visited once. We'd eaten mousse cake on the patio, and in that instant, my entire body went cold. The pieces of a nightmare I hadn't known existed clicked into place. I ended the call as politely as I could, my hands shaking. I practically ran to the staff restroom and locked myself inside. With trembling fingers, I pulled up my credit report, and there it was, the account, my name, my social security number, my address, updated to their house. In that moment, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even call Alyssa. I just stared at my reflection in the mirror, watching my own face shift slowly from confusion to dawning horror. This wasn't a clerical error. It wasn't a joke. Someone had stolen my identity to buy a $600,000 home, and I already knew exactly who. And what terrified me most was that the people who raised us, who loved us both, would probably beg me not to do a damn thing about it. After that call, everything around me blurred. The clinic's cheerful walls, the sound of children's laughter, the hum of printers, it all faded into a distant background I could no longer inhabit. I finished the day on autopilot, smiling when necessary, nodding when prompted. But inside, something fundamental had cracked. That evening, back in my little apartment, I sat on my worn green couch, staring at the ivy spilling over my windowsill. I'd raised those plants from clippings, revived them through long Minnesota winters, talked to them on lonely nights. My home wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. It was uncomplicated, honest, just like how I'd always lived. I'd never really been interested in keeping up with anyone, not even Alyssa. She was 3 years older, and from the time we were kids, she was the one with the spotlight. Homecoming queen, real estate license by 22, a husband with a finance degree, a luxury SUV, a perfectly curated Instagram. And me, I processed new patient intakes and scheduled surgeries. I owned one pair of heels and used my PTO for dentist appointments. I never thought of myself as boring. I thought of myself as peaceful. But peace doesn't make headlines at family dinners. Every other Sunday, we'd all gather at my parents' home. Dad would uncork a Cabernet and declare it too young, while Mom set out her famous lasagna. Alyssa always arrived late, of course, making an entrance. Big laugh. Big stories, big earrings. She'd compliment my shoes, then subtly ask if I'd thought about moving somewhere more grown-up than a rental. I'd laugh it off. I always did. It was easier than trying to explain that I'd chosen stability over show. No one ever said it, but I knew I didn't quite fit their idea of success. I had no ring, no promotion stories, no beachfront vacation photos. I just had bills I paid on time and a life I wasn't ashamed of. And now, that life was hanging by a thread. That night, I barely slept. I lay awake, replaying every interaction, wondering how long Alyssa had planned this. Had she flipped through my mail while I was in the shower? Taken pictures of my ID while I was setting the table for Christmas dinner? And Gavin? Of course he knew. He was the one who bragged about knowing how to make paperwork disappear. The sheer audacity of it all made my jaw clench. Just days before, Alyssa had texted me, bringing dessert. Hope you're still plan-sitting for us next month. They were living in a house with my name on the deed, and I hadn't even been allowed to pick the wallpaper. I showed up at North Lakes Credit Union the next day, armed with my ID, my social security card, and a pit in my stomach so dense it made breathing feel like work. The branch manager, a man named Evan Carlson, met me in a sterile conference room. He slid a folder across the table with a professionalism I both appreciated and resented. Inside were loan documents, closing disclosures, income statements, all with my name, my address, and a signature that almost looked like mine. Almost. This was all processed online, Evan explained. Uploaded documents, digital signatures, income verification. The income stated here is generous. I leaned forward. How much? $198,000 a year. I let out a breathless, disbelieving laugh. $198,000? I make $42,000. His tone shifted. Miss Blake, if you're saying you didn't apply for this loan, this appears to be fraud, identity theft. You'll need to contact the police and start the dispute process immediately. I want copies of everything, I said, my voice calmer than I felt. As I left the bank, I clutched the folder like a detonator. I didn't go home. I drove to a strip mall coffee shop, ordered a black coffee I didn't drink, and began reading each page. I needed to understand how my sister had become a stranger. The next few days blurred into a series of phone calls and a simmering, quiet rage. I filed a fraud alert with the credit bureaus. My score, once a clean 726, had cratered to 542. It wasn't just the mortgage delinquencies. There was a home equity line, 3 maxed-out credit cards, and a personal loan, all under my name, all linked to an email address off by a few digits. Naomi Blake, mpl@gmail.com, instead of naomi.blake@icloud.com. Easy to miss. Easy to explain away. Unless you knew exactly what you were doing. I started searching for proof, the kind that couldn't be laughed off over wine at dinner. A coworker's husband worked in digital forensics and pointed me to a handwriting analyst. They compared the mortgage signatures to copies of my real signature for my nursing license and lease agreement. These are forged, he said. Clever, but forged. Someone was being careful. Too careful. Could you testify to that? I asked. I could, he replied. Then came the part one wasn't proud of. I started snooping. I wasn't technically entitled to look into Alyssa's financial history, but I knew where to look for cracks. Her Instagram might have shown champagne and summer hats, but it also showed too many vacations for a couple who had supposedly just downgraded careers. A friend from college, who worked at a luxury dealership, remembered Alyssa coming in to lease a new Mercedes. She looked amazing, my friend recalled, but when they ran her credit, it completely tanked the application. Gavin had to pay in cash. My friend leaned in, and he didn't look thrilled about it. Their marriage, once a glossy feature spread in our family's social scrapbook, was clearly fraying. But what stunned me most wasn't the money. It was the intent. They weren't just borrowing against my name. They were actively setting me up for collapse. Police would later confirm that searches from Gavin's old laptop included terms like, declare bankruptcy in someone else's name, and can you abandon a stolen identity legally? That wasn't desperation. That was calculated strategy. By the end of the week, I'd gathered enough to make a case, not just to the authorities, but to the people who'd taught me that family comes first. And still, I hesitated. By the way, if you're as stunned as I was by all of this, and you want to hear how this whole train wreck unfolds, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. I hesitated, not because I didn't believe they deserved consequences, but because I knew the moment I said the word police, the people who loved us both would ask me to stay quiet. Sunday dinner was lasagna, as always. My mother had texted the night before, asking if I wanted her to pick up that mousse cake I liked. I told her not to bother. Alyssa already had dessert covered. Of course, she did. I spent nearly an hour getting dressed, not because I cared how I looked, but because I needed to feel fortified. I settled on a navy blouse and dark slacks. Professional. Unshakable. Not the little sister in borrowed shoes. Not tonight. The manila folder in my bag felt heavier with each step toward the door. When I arrived, everything looked exactly the same. My dad in his recliner with a glass of Pinot. My mom in an apron, floating from kitchen to table. Gavin was helping plate the garlic bread, And Alyssa, of course, made her grand entrance 5 minutes late. Hair perfectly curled, cream silk blouse untucked just enough to look effortless. She greeted me like nothing was wrong. "Naomi, finally. You look so put together. Promotion I haven't heard about." I smiled. "No promotion," I said, "just dressing for the occasion." Dinner began like 1,000 others. My brother Sam and his wife chatted about their renovations. Alyssa bragged about the sunroom in her new house, catching the golden hour just right. My mother laughed. My father poured more wine. The mousse cake sat chilling in the fridge. Its presence hung over me like a dare. As the plates cleared, I reached into my bag and wrapped my hand around the folder. My chest felt tight, but not from fear. There was only clarity now. I waited until everyone was quiet, forks resting, mouths full of wine, or words unsaid. "There's something I need to talk to you all about," I said. A pause. My mother glanced up from refilling Sam's glass. "Of course, honey. Everything okay?" Alyssa leaned in, smiling. "Is this about dating? Did someone finally make you cancel your Friday plant watering routine?" The table chuckled softly. I set the folder on the table. The silence that followed was different. Heavy. Intentional. "This is a police report," I said. "I filed it 3 days ago." My father straightened, his eyes narrowing. "Police? What's happened?" I looked directly at Alyssa. "It's about identity theft. Fraud. The purchase of a home using my name. A mortgage I didn't authorize. Documents I didn't sign." Her smile flickered, then vanished. "Naomi, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the house on Highland Avenue," I said. "The one you're living in." My mother let out a quiet, confused gasp. "But that's their new place, isn't it?" I nodded. "It is. And according to the paperwork, it also happens to be mine. The mortgage, the credit lines, the debt. It's all under my name." Alyssa laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "That's ridiculous. Why would I? How would I even do that?" "Forgery," I said, my voice steady. "False income claims. Using an email address 1 character off from mine. Submitting everything from your old condo's IP address. Need more?" I opened the folder and slid the documents forward. Gavin stood up fast, knocking his chair slightly. "We don't have to do this here." My father's voice cut through the tension, low and unfamiliar. "Sit down, Gavin." Alyssa's face had gone pale. She glanced at the papers but didn't touch them. "It was supposed to be temporary," she said finally, her voice small. Then, a sudden snap. "You stole my identity? You weren't using it. You live in a shoebox. You make less than half what you deserve. We just needed time once Gavin's practice bounced back." "Don't," I said, cutting her off. My voice was a low growl I barely recognized. "Don't you dare try to turn this into some twisted rescue mission. You lied. You built a life out of mine." Gavin exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I told you it would come back on us. And you went along with it." I shot back. "I didn't sign the papers, but you knew. You used the cards. You paid for a Mercedes with stolen credit." My mom stood trembling. "Alyssa, tell me this isn't true." Alyssa looked at her, like a child caught in a lie too big to deny. "We were drowning," she whispered. "You all expected so much from me. The house, the image, the lifestyle. We couldn't keep up." My dad stood too. "So you buried your sister to stay above water?" There were tears now. Alyssa's mascara smeared just slightly. "I didn't think it would go this far. I thought we'd fix it before anyone found out." "You were planning to file bankruptcy in my name," I said quietly. "You were never going to fix anything." The room fell silent again. A heavy, suffocating quiet. Finally, my father spoke, his voice shaking with a fury I'd never heard. "Get out, both of you." "Dad." Alyssa started. "No," he said, his gaze unwavering. "We'll deal with the fallout, but you won't do it under this roof." Alyssa started to say something, then stopped. Gavin took her arm. They left without another word. My mother sank back into her chair, her face in her hands. "I don't know who she is anymore." I didn't answer because neither did I. The fallout came fast, and it was louder than I expected. By Monday morning, the local news had picked up the story. Prominent realtor and financial advisor under investigation for identity theft. The article didn't name me, but the address was listed, and anyone who'd ever sat at our dinner table could connect the dots. Texts poured in. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 3 years messaged, "Is it true?" A former coworker from my first job simply commented on a post, "Damn." I turned off notifications and left my phone in a drawer. My parents, on the other hand, didn't retreat so easily. Mom called that Wednesday, her voice thin with exhaustion. "Your dad won't go to his golf group," she said. "He says he can't face them." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, my voice even. She's still your sister, Naomi. I stayed quiet. She made a mistake. A terrible one. But there must be a way to handle this. Quietly. There it was. The word they all kept dancing around. Quietly. It wasn't the first time I'd been asked to be quiet for the sake of peace. Growing up, when Alyssa threw tantrums or bent the truth, I was always told to take the high road. I did, again and again, until that road turned into a cliff. She didn't make a mistake, Mom, I said, my voice firm. She made a series of deliberate decisions. She had every chance to stop. My mother sighed. She could go to prison. And the kids. I flinched. Harper and Reed, 5 and 7. Bright, funny, innocent. They didn't ask for any of this. Think about them, she said softly. Do you want them to grow up visiting their mother through glass? It was the first time I wavered. I didn't want revenge. I wanted restoration of my credit, my name, my life. But was justice worth the collateral damage? I didn't have an answer until my friend Stephanie showed up unannounced with 2 iced coffees and a look that said she wasn't buying my silence. They're trying to guilt you, she said. Don't let them. They're scared. And the kids? I get it. But let me ask you something. If this had been a stranger who did this to you, would you even hesitate? No, I admitted. So, she concluded, why does biology give her a discount? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I already knew the answer. That weekend, the district attorney's office called. They were moving forward with formal charges. They asked if I wanted to provide a statement before the hearing. I told them yes. That night, I reopened the drawer and looked at my phone again. One unread message from my mom. You have every right to be angry, but please don't let this ruin all of us. I typed and deleted 5 replies before finally sending just one sentence. She did that, not me. 9 months after my name was used to build someone else's dream, I signed a mortgage document. My name, my choice, my terms. No forged income, no ghost email addresses, no lies. Just me, a pen, and a truth I had earned the hard way. The irony pressed in from all sides. My sister had hijacked my identity to buy a life she couldn't afford. And now, I was doing the very thing she claimed I wasn't aiming high enough to achieve. I bought a modest 2-bedroom in Bloomington. The backyard was patchy, the appliances outdated, and the mailbox dented. But it was mine, paid for with real money, real credit, and a hard-earned peace. Alyssa and Gavin both pleaded guilty. 18 months in federal prison for her, 12 for him. Their social media perfect life collapsed under the weight of court records and press coverage. I didn't attend the sentencing. I had no interest in watching the aftermath. I was too busy rebuilding what they tried to dismantle. When I moved in, Stephanie brought champagne and a welcome mat that read, "Not today, identity thieves." My parents came separately. My mother brought lasagna in a baking dish I recognized from childhood. My father handed me a fern in a clay pot and said, "I didn't say it before, but you were right to do what you did." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. A few weeks later, I received a letter addressed in pink marker, sealed with a unicorn sticker. It was from Harper. Dear Aunt Naomi, it read, I know Mommy did something really bad. I still love her, but I love you, too. I drew a flower for your new house because Mommy says you grow good plants. Can I come visit one day? I stared at that note for a long time. The betrayal had nearly broken me. But this wasn't a story about ruin. It was a story about planting new roots. I may never forgive my sister, but I don't need to live in that shadow anymore. This house, flawed as it is mine. It was built on truth, not theft. On boundaries, not guilt. And for the first time, I feel safe inside my own name. This whole ordeal changed everything for me. It forced me to stand up for myself in a way I never thought I'd have to. So I want to know, if you were in my shoes, faced with this kind of betrayal from someone you loved, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear what you think.